So, do you guys remember that when Roe versus Wade was overturned, the argument that was coming from the right was like, hey man, this was the holy grail. This was our ultimate end goal. All we wanted to do was turn the issue of abortion over to the states so that the states can decide if they want to ban abortion. And if they don't want to ban abortion, hey, we're totally fine with that. That's the way federalism works. We are cool with it. And the counter-argument from a lot of people at the time, including me, was, my ass cheeks that this is your real belief. You want to go further. You want to do a national abortion ban. Well, lo and behold, here we are. So this is, the Lever News is reporting this. Abortion foes target their next Supreme Court fight. The right is now trying to use a Rhode Island case to get the high court to create a federal abortion ban. So there we have it. Now, the game playing is gonzo, and they're showing all their cards. When the U.S. Supreme Court allowed states to limit reproductive rights in its June ruling in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, experts predicted that conservatives would soon use the decision to try to secure a federal ban on abortion. Now that's exactly what's happening. At the very moment abortion rights have become a central issue in midterm elections, anti-abortion activists in Rhode Island just filed a petition asking the Supreme Court to consider overturning their state judge's recent decision that fetuses do not have standing to challenge the state's law protecting abortion rights. They want the high court to rule that fetuses are entitled to due process and equal protection under the 14th Amendment. Such a ruling establishing fetal personhood would go beyond the Dobbs ruling by banning abortions nationwide rather than leaving the issue to the states. To move forward, the petitioners need just 4 of the Supreme Court justices to agree to hear the case. Quote, this case presents the unavoidable confrontation of Dobbs, the petition says, which left unresolved the tensions between the 10th Amendment, federalism, and any surviving constitutional guarantees for the unborn. Each year, thousands of claimants petition the Supreme Court to consider cases, and the court typically grants only about 80 of the requests. Already, 14 states have banned abortion in most or all cases, meaning nearly 21 million women have lost access to abortion, and more states are considering laws to restrict access. Quote, the recognition of fetal personhood nationwide could mean a total ban on abortion for everyone in the United States, and if an increasingly sophisticated minority of anti-abortion extremists have their way, many more women would face criminal charges for ending their pregnancies. Wow. A promise that the court will no longer decide. When the court handed down the Dobbs ruling, the majority didn't weigh in on the constitutional rights of fetuses. Quote, our decision is not based on any view about when a state should regard prenatal life as having rights or legally cognizable interests, Justice Samuel Alito wrote for the majority. In a concurring opinion, Justice Brett Kavanaugh seemed to go further, arguing that any remaining questions about when abortion should be legal would be left to the states. Quote, the court will no longer decide how to evaluate the interests of the pregnant woman and the interest in protecting fetal life throughout pregnancy, he wrote. Instead, those difficult moral and policy questions will be decided, as the Constitution dictates, by the people and their elected representatives through the constitutional processes of democratic self-government. Despite conservative justices signaling that they will let states take the lead, the anti-abortion movement is moving ahead to try to force the issue. The petition from the Rhode Island activists asked the court to consider whether unborn fetuses have standing to sue. By the way, how would that work? How would that work? Fetuses don't have the cognitive ability or the consciousness or the ability to speak to have standing. So somebody would have to bring a case on behalf of the fetuses, which is by definition not the fetuses doing it. So now they are super reaching with this stuff. In particular, to overturn a 2019 law passed in Rhode Island that prevented the state from interfering in a person's right to an abortion prior to fetal viability, or after fetal viability when necessary to preserve the health or life of the individual. In May, the Rhode Island Supreme Court ruled that fetuses did not have standing to sue. That opinion was based in part on the higher court's decision in Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The anti-abortion activist petition notes that Roe was overturned by Dobbs and argues that Supreme Court justices should hear their appeal to finally determine whether prenatal life at any gestational age enjoys constitutional protection, considered the full and comprehensive history and tradition of our Constitution and law supporting personhood for unborn human beings. So this is them going all in. If at least 4 justices vote to take up the case, Kavanaugh and the other justices will be forced to decide in the face of their declining public approval just how far they are willing to go in their assault on reproductive rights. Okay, so now, so this is them making their move. This is them, trying to go for the whole thing. What's going to happen? Well, my answer is very simple. I don't know. Because part of me thinks, you know what? Take the Supreme Court justices at their word in what they said in the Dobbs decision. In the Dobbs decision, most of them were pretty clear that this is it. Like, this is as far as we're going to go. It's left up to the states. We mean that it should be left up to the states. We think that that's the proper constitutional ruling. But, and there's a big but, it's not like these justices didn't lie relentlessly to all of our faces in their respective hearings when they were, in front of Congress and they were determining whether or not these people would be on the court. I mean, we have video of Neil Gorsuch. We have video of Brett Kavanaugh. We have video of Amy Coney Barrett either flat out saying or implying that Roe versus Wade is precedent and it's not going anywhere and it's under no threat. And then what did they do? They threw out Roe versus Wade. So they lied, and they did the opposite of the thing they said they would do, or at the very least implied they would do. Well, now we have a situation where they're on the record, most of them, I should say, are on the record in the Dobbs decision saying, this is as far as we're going to go. If you take them at face value, they will reject this case, they won't take it up, and, what's the current status quo will remain. But it is possible, they say, let's hear the case. And then it is yikes times a trillion, my dudes and dudettes. Then we are really in quite a pickle. We would be in quite a pickle, to say the least. So, I will say this. I do think Clarence Thomas will want to hear out this case. Because Clarence Thomas is very extreme. So I think he would rule to have fetal personhood be interpreted in the Constitution, which, by the way, is not an originalist interpretation of the Constitution, because these guys pretend to be originalists. I do think he would read that into the Constitution, and so he would support a nationwide ban on abortion. So Clarence Thomas is on that page, I think. I also think maybe Kavanaugh might be on that page as well. But the rest of them, the rest of the conservative justices, it's really a coin toss. You just don't know. Because there are degrees of extremism among the various justices. So, anyway, this is it, man. This is their final move. They are trying to totally eliminate abortion in this country. And, by the way, this is not the only avenue they have. This is an attempt to get the Supreme Court to determine, that our interpretation of the Constitution is that fetuses have personhood. So abortion is banned everywhere. That's what they're trying to do. But there is always the concern, and maybe this is even a bigger concern, to be honest, of a situation where the Republicans take the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency, and if at any point in time they get a supermajority, they absolutely would vote to ban abortion nationwide. So it could just come through standard legislation and not just, it doesn't have to come through the Supreme Court. I think the bigger threat is probably through Congress or it's roughly equal, right? So there's multiple avenues now where these people are going on the offense and they are not planning on stopping. So doesn't look good, man. Doesn't look good. The only potential silver lining is if you take them at their word in the decision in Dobbs, then they're not going to do this. But they've already shown that their word is not, too trustworthy. So who knows?